classic Amato show. All right, switching gears now. We all know about the Christian Holocaust taking place in Iraq. We know about the Christians under attack. Geez, just last week, there were reports of little Christian children being beheaded in Iraq, and their heads placed on a stick and displayed at a park at one of the cities in Iraq. But what we don't hear about is the crackdown on Christianity taking place in China. Join me this time from New York, with the Independence Women Forum, and a columnist with National Review is Jillian Melchior. Jillian, you're covering this story. You just wrote Melchior. My apologies, Jillian. You're covering the story. You just wrote a piece at the New York Post. What's happening in China?
Yeah, well, so Christianity there has been sort of tolerated ever since the end of Mao's reign over China. But over the last couple months, basically since January, China's kind of begun a crackdown again, and it's focused on one province, Zhejiang province. And it's actually considered the most Christian place in China. I've been there to Wenzhou, met with believers there. And they say that in the past couple months, the Chinese government has torn down 226 different church crosses, demolished churches, and issued eviction notices or demolition notices to about 100 more. So I think this is really an intensifying crackdown, potentially indicative of what China's new leadership plans for Christianity and for religion in general.
Why this province? Why Christianity? What is it about religion and Christianity that this new leadership so fears in China?
Well, I don't think it's just this new leadership. I mean, if you look at China's founding communist principles, they expect that religion's going to die out. So under Mao, they tried to crack down on it. They were really brutal to Christians, imprisoned some, killed some, but they were unable to stamp it out. So after Mao died, they had to come up with a new strategy to deal with it. And what they did was establish state-sanctioned churches where Christianity could operate, but it would be really tightly controlled, the government handling everything from who becomes a pastor to who can become a member, down to even what the content of sermons are. Regardless of that, underground churches also sprung up, and Christianity boomed. I mean, right now, by some estimates, there are as many as 100 million Christians in China. So I think you look at the Communist Party right now, it's got about 86 million members. They see this as a potentially organized, potentially political group, and they're intimidated by it. But what I think is so interesting is when I was out there reporting, meeting with Christians, they didn't want to have anything to do with politics. And crackdowns like this really politicize them. So I think China's playing a risky game here.
China's playing a risky game. The world's a lot more transparent than it once was under Mao, as you pointed out. And what baffles me, Jillian, is that China has opened up their markets. I'm not saying they're pure capitalism, but they're more capitalistic than they once were. And those who believe in capitalism realizes that freedom is what follows. Democracy is what follows. I just don't understand how you can play a game of half in and half out and expect it to work.
Yeah, well, I think actually the boom in Christianity in China is really linked to that economic policy. You've got massive corruption. You've got sort of a moral system there where under Mao, all morality was targeted. All sources of, beliefs about how you treat other human beings demolished. So you've got people that really have a moral value of money, and it makes people treat other people horribly. I mean, you see that down to the counterfeit scandals, 2 toddlers being run over in the streets there and no one stopping to help.
Oh, man.
So I think Christianity is the check there. I mean, that's been the moral response. It's been the system of belief that's totally contrary to what society is putting out. And I think people look for community and they look for moral beliefs, and Christianity's done it. I think that explains the boom.
Bottom line, before we switch topics, you believe this backfires on the Chinese government over a period of time?
Yeah, I really think it's got the potential to. I mean, I want to really stress this. When I talk to Christians in China, they said that they want to follow both God and Caesar. They want to obey the government if they can. But I think, like you saw during the Cultural Revolution, God comes first, and they're not going to give that up if they have to make a choice. And also in Wenzhou, in Zhejiang province in particular, it's a very affluent place. The church supports everything from, orphanages to elderly homes. It's things that the government isn't doing. And I think by cracking down on Christianity, they undermine a source of social harmony, and that's a risky game in a corrupt country.
All right, switching gears, Jillian Melcher, a moment ago, I mentioned how the world's a lot more transparent place than it was, say, 100 years ago. Now, speaking of transparency, how about the Obama White House? It may have been a top Obama White House official which deleted the healthcare.gov emails, and you're following that story. Tell us what you know.
Boy, isn't that interesting. So about 10 months ago, Congress subpoenaed emails about the rocky rollout of healthcare.gov. Well, they hadn't heard back, so they finally followed up and found out that Marilyn Tavenner, head of CMS, has this weird little habit of deleting emails. She says it's because her Microsoft Outlook inbox is too small, so she deletes them and they don't always get backed up. Now, what I think really stretches credibility on this is that part of her job, part of one of her fundamental job description things, is to be the one at CMS in charge of having a policy for retaining records. Deleting records intentionally to cover up something is a federal crime. It's something that's a felony. You get 3 years in prison for it. So, I think the best case scenario here is that she was ignoring her own responsibilities as administrator, that she was also ignoring the Federal Records Act and the policies set up. And I think the worst case scenario is she's participating in a cover-up. Either way, it's very disturbing, and it's very indicative of the Obama administration's poor record on transparency.
Oh, they are the most transparent administration in U.S. history. We all know that, Jillian.
They love saying that.
We're getting to a point where it wouldn't surprise me, Jillian Melcher, if we see a grassroots uprising of every ordinary American citizens calling on their congressmen and their senators to demand an independent investigation of the IRS, because I think it's pretty clear that Eric Holder is not about to make that call. And I believe, I could be wrong, but I feel an angst, a growing rage in America right now among those following this story, where they're not going to just sit back and be passive viewers of the topic. I may be wrong, but we'll see what happens. Jillian Melcher, Senior Fellow at the Independent Women's Forum and columnist for the National Review, thank you for joining us. The Ebola outbreak, dawning of the zombie apocalypse, or a vast